This is disc number 2 of the interview with William L. O'Keefe, who was served during World War II and was talking about his prisoner of war camps that he was in Germany. So we'll continue the disc now. Bill, you were doing such a great job. You want to pick up where we left off there? We're talking about the last one you moved into before you liberated.
Well, the British liberated us. One of the things that really was hard on morale was April the 12th. It's the only time that the Germans come in and gave us any news. And the news they gave us was that the president died.
President Roosevelt had died.
Right. And that really demoralized us because nobody knew what was going to happen then. We didn't find out that Truman was president until actually after we got liberated. But when the head of the country dies, and you're in a situation like that, it's tough.
Did you have a structure in the POW camp of officers in charge, and do you have routine at all?
No, the officers were separated from us. They went to a different camp. We did have one thing that happened while we were there. The Air Force camp, one of the Air Force camps in eastern Germany was getting, the Russians were getting close to them. So they marched the prisoners from that camp into our camp. And then when the troops start getting close to our camp, when our troops start getting close, they took them back out of the camp and start marching them back the other way. So I have met a few of the guys that were in that group that were marched in and out. And actually, there's one from Troy here that was in that group. I guess most of them made it through the whole walk in pretty good shape, so I was glad to hear that.
Yeah. Well, then, when you were liberated, how did it happen, and how did you feel? The Germans abandoned it, and
actually, the morning that we got liberated, one of the fellas in our barracks went outside to go to the latrine, which was at the other end of the compound. And he went outside, and then pretty soon he was right back in again. He says, something's going on. And he says, there's only one guard out there. He says, there's nobody up in they have machine guns up in the towers. There was nobody in the towers. And so we all took turns sticking our head out the door to see what was going on. And figured out that in each compound there was only one guard. And so we finally started going outside to see what was going on, a couple of the guys tried to get the guard that was in our compound, which he was about the nicest guard we had. And I think what the Germans did was, when they knew that somebody was coming to liberate the camp, they took the ones, their soldiers that got along the best with the prisoners, left them there, and everybody else moved out. And well, it wasn't long till we could hear tanks, and pretty soon one of them pulled up outside the woods across from the camp. And it finally dawned on us it wasn't German. So it was a little bit of a celebration started going on. But then the British finally come down and got into the camp, and a bunch of newspaper men showed up. So we got to give them their names and addresses and stuff, so that they could notify people at home.
Well, what kind of condition were the prisoners in?
Most of them were still navigating.
That lost weight and so forth?
Oh, yeah, everybody lost weight. I did fine up until about 2 weeks before we got liberated. I got diphtheria, and that's a no-no in a prison camp. So thankfully, I didn't know I had diphtheria, and they didn't know I had diphtheria, but my throat swelled up, and I got to the point where I couldn't swallow anything because it burned so bad, except tea. I traded all my rations off every day for tea, and that's the only thing I could get down. And I had to keep my head in a certain position so I didn't strangle myself because I couldn't breathe. And then finally, after a while, I hemorrhaged from the nose, and then the swelling started going down. But after I come back, I talked to a doctor about it, and he said it was diphtheria. So.
Would the British put you in the hospital or do anything for you at that time?
No. I was bound and determined I wasn't going to go to the hospital. I was going home.
But didn't you have, now your feet were in bad shape and you froze your hands?
Mm-hmm.
And they're both, and you're still, and you had diphtheria.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But, the British wanted to put me in the hospital, but I talked them out of that because I wanted to get back. And
well,
so,
where did they move you then? From the British to the American, or what? Transfer you over?
The British kept us in camp, fed us, kept us in the same camp, fed us. We were there almost a week, I guess. And they fed us, and that's about it, really. And they finally, they moved us to Berghorst, I think is the name of the place. And set us up there until planes come in to pick us up. They flew us from there to Brussels, Belgium. And we spent one day in Brussels, and then they moved us down in the Moor and turned us over to the Americans then. So we, from the Moor, they put us, I don't really know how we got from the Moor, because however we got there, I was sleeping all the way. And we ended up at Camp Lucky Strike in France, north of Le Havre. And then we spent a little time there, and then they put us on the Marine Fox, it's a Liberty ship, and we went home.
And the whole company stayed together all this time, or just start separating you?
Well,
They kept you all together?
pretty much, yeah.
And so now you're on the way home.
Right.
It had to be a wonderful feeling.
We got to outside of New York Harbor, and the ship's captain or whatever he is come down. We were on the front end of the ship, and he standing beside me, and he looked at me and he says, "You want to see home?" "Yep." He says, "Watch straight ahead." He says, "You're going to see home." So I stood there and I watched, and all at once I could see a little dot out there, the Statue of Liberty. And that made me feel good. But all this time, you know, when you get captured, you fill out forms so that they can notify your government and your parents. And they never did.
So people at home knew you were missing, but they didn't know where you were.
Nope.
Well, when did they notify them?
I did.
When you walked in the house?
No. I called them from a hospital in New Jersey. And
their feeling had to be then extremely happy knowing that you now were alive and back home. How long did you stay in the hospital in New Jersey?
Week. Two weeks. I spent my 20th birthday there.
20th birthday. Well, did you still have signs of the diphtheria and anything else, or what they do is start treating your hands and feet, or what?
No. The only thing I had with my hands and feet was numbness. The crazy thing is that everything didn't affect me until I got home. After I got home, excuse me. Now, my mind didn't work with my body.
when you got home. And you're 20 years old. Explain that a little bit more to me.
If I was holding a glass of water, I had to look at it and concentrate, or else it fell out of my hand. If I were walking and somebody said something to me,
It was a coordination thing then, huh, Bill?
it's still
Well, let me talk for a minute. Your family was happy, you were home, and you were not married, of course, then,
no
and still single, and you went back to Pittsburgh.
right.
When you got back to Pittsburgh, did you go to school, did you go to work, or what?
Well, they put me in an MP outfit.
So you're still in the military,
Yeah.
and you,
I was in there for, I got home in June, and I got 2 months recoup. And, then they sent me to Atlantic City to be reassigned. And I got a week, I think it was, in Atlantic City, or 2 weeks. And then they sent me to back to Pittsburgh to an empty outfit.
so you finished your military service in Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
and that was military police. Well, was there a military post around Pittsburgh at that time?
Oh, yeah.
There was, I didn't know that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well then, tell me this then, this is when now,
1945.
1945. And when did they separate you from the service?
1946, January.
January 46. And you were separated there in Pittsburgh?
No, I had to go to Indian Town Gap to get
In Town
separated.
Gap, okay. Well, that traumatic time from there getting back home and so forth, but I want to ask you a couple questions about what did you do then? Did you go to work for somebody, go to school?
I went to, after I got discharged, I got a temporary job with the Duke and Light Company.
Okay,
But there was a ruling that unions couldn't strike during the war.
right.
So the Duquesne Light Company didn't give any raises during the war, I guess. Anyways, they had a union, and they disagreed on how to pay people. But they decided to go on strike. And the ruling was that I had to join the union, even though I was on a temporary job.
Mm-hmm.
But, so I joined the union, and then the day the strike was over, my job was gone.
Ah,
So I was out of work. And getting a job in Pittsburgh at that time was horrendous after the war, because everybody was getting out of the war business and getting into everything else. So trying to find a job in Pittsburgh was almost impossible. And my sister had married a guy from Troy and was living down here, so I come down to visit her and find work. And I've been here ever since.
So you came to Troy after that to get a fine job. Where'd you go to work?
Over manufacturing.
Over manufacturing. Made mixers or dishwashers or what?
Well, I was timekeeper there.
Okay.
And then I left there let's see, 54, I think it was. I went to work for Aero Products because that was the up-and-coming place. And then they sold out and moved. And,
Moved to Indianapolis.
yeah. So then I went to work for Older Brothers. And I worked there for 33 years.
You had a lot of history with the companies in Troy then.
Mm-hmm.
So you retired then,
Yeah.
did you retire at 65 or later?
Well, I was almost 66.
That's okay.
A month short of 66.
When did you get married?
1948.
And you met a girl here or Pittsburgh?
No. I married a girl that lived across the street from me when we were kids
From where? Pittsburgh?
in Pittsburgh.
Ah, you grew up with her then.
Yep. She
Nice.
hated my guts.
Pulled her pigtails probably.
No, she and I didn't agree on anything.
But how many years you been married now?
Well, she died about a month ago,
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
and we had 63, almost 64 years in.
Wonderful. How about family?
Got two, boy and a girl.
Boy and a girl, they here in Troy?
Well, the girl is, she lives down on Dogwood. The boy lives in Villa Hills, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there.
Well, you've had a wonderful time, and I don't want to keep you too much longer, get you tired. But one last thing, of all these things that happened to you in the Second World War, what did you take away from that? How do you feel about that today?
Oh. I'm proud of my service. I think I'm the luckiest guy in the world, really. In the time that I was in combat, I had 5 times the shells landed within arm's length of me. It exploded and never touched me. I always got the feeling that if it ever hit me, I was going to be gone. But I've had twice where I hit the ground like you're supposed to do, and a shell hit close enough to me that it blackened my glasses, blew my helmet off my head. And I notice now they're in combat and they wear their straps under their chin. If I'd have done that, I'd have had a broken neck. Because my helmet cleared pine trees. And I had one shell from an 88 that hit in the road right beside me. Blew me off the road and never touched me. And I mean, I had to be a guy sitting on my shoulder or something, because it was scary.
Well, Bill, we've enjoyed listening to you today. On behalf of the citizens of the United States, the Library of Congress, and Post 43, we thank you for your contribution to the Second World War. You put up a terrible, terrible time, but you were one of our heroes and you're one of the people. Before we leave, though, I would like for you to show them the manual with the medals in there. Tony, you want to go over there and stand there by him, hold by him? And you have to hold him up, you have to, about his head height, about there. Just, can you leaf through some of those medals? There's his bronze star.
The
combat infantry.
Good conduct.
Good conduct. Prisoner of war.
Occupation of Germany. That I don't understand, unless they're counting the time that I was in the prison camp.
Middle Eastern Campaign. Victory Medal. And of course, his marksman's and a regimental. His lapel pin, the 157th.
That's
his shoulder patch.
the
45th Division.
That's third service.
French Jubilee Medal, honorable discharge, letter from the House of Representatives.
Yeah, that's
Dog tags. Well, it's a fascinating thing that you have of all those things put together. Again, that just shows you the sacrifice and the service that Bill has given forth to the country. He wrote these 2 articles. You want to hold that up again there for him? He wrote these 2 books himself. And we're going to maybe send those to the Library of Congress with a separate set of papers. Again, Bill, thanks so much for being with us today. And again, we enjoyed having you and appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you.